Hi, Pete. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing good. I'm looking forward to a good night's sleep.
I'm sure you are. I really appreciate the fact you were able to squeeze this interview in. It seems to me like for the last couple of weeks you have been a very busy man.
I think it's kind of par for the course. That's the way it's been for the past 2 years and 8 months, or however long it's been.
Seems to me you've been to Ohio twice this week, and New York and the UN, and somewhere in between. How do you keep your schedule balanced? How do you figure out what you're doing tomorrow? How far ahead are you thinking?
I have to say that most days I'm thinking about the day and then tomorrow. Basically, what time does he start tomorrow is what I try to find out before I leave.
Let me start off by asking you to tell us a little bit about the history of White House photography.
The first documented official White House photographer, that is a photographer assigned specifically to the White House for documenting the presidency, was during the Kennedy administration. And at that time, it was a military office. They had two military photographers, Cecil Stoughton and Bob Knudsen, assigned to photograph the presidency of John F. Kennedy. When LBJ came in, he hired Yoshio Okamoto, who I think everybody says was the first one that really, truly documented the presidency, and that he photographed Johnson, every event that he did, every meeting, before hours, after hours. And I think to this day, really, that's the bar. He set the bar for how you document a presidency, Yoshio Okamoto did.
Now, you worked at the Reagan White House, which was a film era, if my memory is correct. How does the film era White House documentary work and the digital era separate itself in your mind?
Well, it was much more logistically challenging during the film era. We had a Navy film lab that processed all our film, made contact sheets, and made prints. And at that time, you can imagine if the press office wanted to use one of our photographs to release it to the press from a private meeting or something like that, it was a time-consuming process. You had to send film to the lab, get the contact sheets back, do your editing, go back to the lab, say this is the one we want to print, and then hand out prints to the wire services, and then they would send the photos out. So that was, a minimum of 3 to 4 hours. And then what do you do when you're on the road? You have to bring a lab on the road. So it was just a huge logistical challenge in terms of the immediacy of using photographs. In terms of archiving, I think now with everybody using digital, the past administrations that used film are all scrambling to scan in all the negatives from the past administrations.
What are your goals, your personal goals as a White House photographer?
I think my goal is really to create the best body of work that I can for this administration. There's a lot of immediate uses of our photographs, but I'm always thinking about the archive, and that we have a visual archive that is unsurpassed from any other administration.
You're the chief photographer. Are there other photographers that work with you?
Yes, I have three photographers. that work with me, and they will supplement my coverage at big events. So, for instance, today we went to Cincinnati, and one photographer went with me, Samantha Appleton, and she would work the peripheral parts of the event, trying to photograph from angles that I wasn't shooting from. Mm-hmm. So, at big White House events, we'll have me plus 2 additional photographers. We also cover the First Lady fairly extensively, although she doesn't have as busy a schedule as the President because she's, trying to be a mom. And but she does have events. I'd probably say on the average 2 to 3 days a week. She does travel. She went to the UN with us this last week, so we had somebody basically shadowing her for her events and activities during the UN General Assembly related events.
So you've got yourself, a handful of other shooters, image makers. When do you all find time to write the captions and put what I think of as metadata, but the information to the pictures?
The photographers, we have a photo archivist who's been on the staff since the Reagan administration. So that's been a non-political position, the only one really in the office. She will write captions for each of the scheduled events. The photographers are responsible for inputting captions with their takes, and it may differ slightly from what the photo archivist writes, depending on the nature of the event. And so they're responsible for writing their own captions, embedding them in the images. Because I'm so busy, I have one of the photo editors do that with my pictures. And then Janet, the photo archivist, will go through everybody's work, and she'll add keywords. So, for instance, during the whole debt ceiling crisis, debate, whatever you want to call it, we made sure that all the meetings that I was covering and any related events, that all of those pictures were captioned appropriately. So, within 50 years, somebody wants to go back and search through, that 3 to 4 month period when this whole process was going on, they'd be able to call up all of the pictures related to that particular situation. Same with when we were passing the health care bill. Same with the BP oil spill, strategy in Afghanistan, and so on and so forth. So the goal is that not just for our own purposes now, but for 50 years, 500 years, researchers would be able to come in and search either through keyword or through captions, every conceivable situation.
I think it's tough for people that are outside of your role to understand how many pictures you might take in a meaningful sense, say a day, or how many images you and the other photographers would do. Do you have any way of giving us a number that might say, I shoot 1,000 pictures a day, or how do you categorize that? Because that's a lot of captions, a lot of information you're putting together.
Well, I mean, fortunately, a lot of the pictures are from the same situation. So, for instance, today we went to Cincinnati. He spoke in front of that bridge. So the captions for that whole take, for the most part, would be the same. Then, if there was, he works a rope line, where he's shaking hands at the end, we don't know the individual people that he's shaking hands with in the crowd. So it's more or less a general caption. Now, if he's meeting with, the mayor of Cincinnati or the mayor of Covington, Kentucky, we'll specify that in that particular photograph or photographs. So in terms of numbers, I would say I shoot anywhere between 500 and 1,500 pictures a day, just sort of depending, on the day and how much is going on.
Sure. Well, I know a lot of the people that are watching or will be watching this event are archivists and librarians. And whatever the number you shoot, will there be an edited selection, or will every frame that you shoot be included?
Every frame is included. The material that we produce is covered under the Presidential Records Act, and by law, we cannot delete photos. So as you can imagine, the challenge for us is that's a huge amount of data. And so that's one of the challenges, is making sure that that the server is intact, that it's backed up. We had what turned out to be a minor earthquake in D.C. when we were at Martha's Vineyard with the president. And this is probably a sad state of affairs for me, but the first thing that I did was call our IT guy and say, is the server okay? Because that's like my greatest fear. And of course, what I should have done is called my family first to make sure everybody was okay. But so that sort of gives you, the things that keep me awake at night are, when you're shooting all digital, you want to make sure that we're not going to lose this information.
Sounds like you're doing an excellent job. I want to know about who decides what to photograph. Do you get a set of assignments? Do you self-assign? Or is it just every day I cover everything that moves?
It's pretty much every day I cover everything that moves. The only way that differs is with family activities. So, I sort of know now which activities they would like me to cover, but if there's a question, I'll just ask. If the president's having a private dinner in the residence with friends, I'll just ask the president usually. Yeah, and I have to say that they're very open to us photographing, or mostly me, photographing the family activities, mostly knowing that those pictures will stay private. Those, we would make prints for them, but those aren't the kind of pictures that we normally would release.
But they will be part of the final archive that
Yes.
goes into the library.
Yes.
Is there a point at which you understand that it's time for you to leave, or that the information is too sensitive, or are you simply are you the fly on the wall?
I'm the fly on the wall in the national security meetings. I do have the same clearance as does the national security staff, so that's not an issue. I've done this long enough that they all trust me. They know I don't, talk about things that might happen over here, and it's really never been an issue. One thing that I've learned about this president is if he's having a one-on-one meeting, with a senator or a head of state, and when I say one-on-one, I mean a true one-on-one meeting, he likes to have he likes to keep those private. So he has no problem with me taking photos, but he won't want me to stay the entire meeting, which is, you know, fine. So I usually stay until I know I have usable photographs, and then he doesn't ask me to leave, but I just leave when I feel, you know, I've got what I need. You know, there's very, very minute difference between a routine photograph and a good photograph in these meetings. And it's, you know, body language, gestures, and so on. And you just don't know at what part of the meeting that's all going to come together. So when there's like, you know, big historic, you know, there's a big decision being made in this meeting, I tend to try to stay in for those entire meetings, just to provide, you know, the best documentation of that meeting that I can.
Well, that makes sense. The most recent picture that I can think of that was absolutely historic and at the top of my thought pattern was the Bin Laden event images that you made of everyone in whatever room of the White House that everybody had gathered. That had to be a difficult shoot. It had to be a tense time. Can you recall how you felt about that shoot and the images that were made?
Well, I mean, I knew that day was coming, and there was really a series of meetings that entire day. And the picture that you're referring to was taken while the raid was taking place, and they were monitoring in real time what was happening. This was in one of the small, I think probably the smallest conference room that's called the Situation Room. And just to give a little background, the Situation Room is really a series of conference rooms. The president usually uses the big conference room. But because they had the communications set up in the small conference room, they moved into this small conference room. And really the difficult part for me was there was really no room for me in that meeting. It was, you know, I think you can see from the picture, everybody's going to jam in there. And so I just like pushed my way past, you know, everybody to get in one corner of the room. And then I was stuck there for, you know, I forget what it was, maybe 45 minutes. I couldn't physically move. There was no place for me to go. So it was basically, you know, watching and waiting the facial expressions of everything that they were watching, and then, you know, just hoping that one sort of came together.
Obviously, after the fact, that picture has been played with, manipulated, a variety of things have been done with it. So how do you feel about that, seeing it kind of over-photoshopped and manipulated for humor?
Well, I mean, I think that's sort of just the nature of the society we now live in. I guess that's to be expected. Some of them were actually quite amusing, I thought. And it's funny to see one of your photographs getting that kind of attention in a, I don't know if you'd call it a negative way, but I guess in a parody kind of way. One of the things that I made a hard fast rule about from day one was that we were going to do very little photoshopping. We were going to do adjust whites and blacks, make sure we have the right color tone, and do what everyone considers acceptable editorial Photoshop work, meaning, you know, maybe some little dodging and burning. The situation with this photograph was there was a classified document on the table. And that presented a real problem for us because we had never digitally altered a photograph before. So I spent probably 4 or 5 hours trying to convince various security people to declassify that document so that we could release the photo as is. I did not win that discussion, but I felt that the photograph was important enough that this was the one exception to the rule, and that we purposely pixelized that document within the photograph. And, you know, I wrote the caption myself for this. I wanted to put in the caption exactly what we had done so that it was completely transparent. And, you know, I knew some editors would have a problem with publishing such a photograph. I have to say, as it turned out, it wasn't an issue for, I don't think, any publication that I know. The New York Times ran the photo 6 columns, Time Magazine ran it as a 2-page spread. So I think because everybody understood the importance of the photograph, the fact that there was a classified document that we could not show, and that we told everybody about it, that they felt it was acceptable for publication.
That brings into question, of course, all of the terms of manipulation, and I think you've defined pretty well the rules that you've set down, setting the black, setting the color correctness. But under your watch, we have also quit reenacting pictures from the president's speeches. How did that go down, and can you give me your perspective on that just a little bit?
I worked with the White House press office and with a representative from the press corps to find a solution so that the press photographers could have their own photograph of the speech as it took place.
Mm-hmm.
And just to set this, just to back up a little bit, what we're talking about is live addresses to the nation, where the president speaks from the Oval Office, the East Room, something like that, where he's addressing a live television audience. And traditionally, the press corps photographers would be brought in after the speech, and the president would reread the first paragraph of the speech so the photographers could have a still picture. You know, that just was not a smart thing to do. It's been done for 50 years. It basically the photographers were producing a fake photograph.
It seems like you're working very hard at being transparent in your delivery of information. Now, because we're here at OU and there's a bunch of your former students and faculty, there's this game that goes on here called repeat sightings. We cite you on various TV networks, and oh, did you see Pete last night covering whatever the topic was? Might you ever worry that you're going to miss something? It seems to me you're everywhere, but obviously you can't be everywhere. Is there a fear of just simply not being at the right place at the right time?
You know, I can't lose sleep over that. I mean, I think that that my fear is that I'll miss something if I'm not there. And that's why I'm like pretty much going every trip, and I cover all the private meetings, and so that's sort of my fears. If I'm not there, something's going to happen. But I can't. Photographers love to tell stories about the pictures that got away, and I'm sure I've missed many that I've already forgotten about in this administration. And I do the best that I can, and I can't lose sleep if I'm in the wrong spot when something happens. I mean, I trust my instincts that that I'm in the right spot, and
so you haven't built an acronym for this fear yet? Fear of missing pictures.
Well, I call it FOMA. FOMA, fear of missing anything.
Okay, I like that. Well, give us a sense of what your typical working day is like, if you would. When do you start? When does it end? On a typical day, not these special days.
A typical day is I'll leave my house at 7:30 in the morning, and I'll leave the office probably between 7 and 7:30 at night. So, I'd say the typical day is 11 and a half hours. And then weekends are a little more lax in that if he's at the White House, he usually doesn't come in until late morning on Saturday. And then so there maybe just 11 to 5 if there's nothing special going on. And then Sundays will depend if he's what he's doing. One of the things that I've stopped doing is if he goes golfing on Sunday, I send somebody else from the staff, just because I gotta have some time off, or you just sort of can't do it.
One of the things that your coverage has done, it's been released regularly in galleries or setups, groups of edited pictures onto Flickr. I have got to assume this is the first time that the White House has used a Flickr feed. Tell us a little bit about that decision and how that came about.
Well, to be quite honest with you, that was something that I resisted. My whole thought process was we're doing these photographs for history, not for now. Until the people that he brought in to do the press and communications, Robert Gibbs and people like that, convinced me that no, this president wants to be as transparent as possible. He wants people to see these pictures now. And so once they convinced me, we've just gone full bore in trying to present the best pictures from every month to the public on our Flickr site. It's also used as the Flickr feed is also used if there's a daily photograph from a private meeting that the administration wants to put out for the press corps. So we use the Flickr feed for that as well. So traditionally, every 2 weeks, we're uploading a new batch of behind-the-scenes photos. And then I'd say once or twice a week, there'll be some meeting in the Situation Room or something where the press office will want us to release an individual photo. So like last week, the president invited the Medal of Honor recipient Dakota Meyer to have a beer with him the night before his public reception. And that was just the two of them on the president's private patio. And so we released the photograph probably within 15 minutes after it was taken. So the press, if they wanted to, could use this photograph.
Who decides what pictures go into the galleries or on to release like that? Just give us a little bit of background on that, please.
Well, I mean, ultimately, it's me. Jen Poggi, the White House photo editor, will do the initial edit, and then I'll go through and edit her edit or add or subtract. And then we have Josh Ernest, who's the deputy press secretary. We'll go through, you know, and take one look. And I'd say that he signs off on probably 96% of, you know, the pictures that I select. I mean, there's always a, you know, a particular reason. We might have chosen a picture from a private meeting that they didn't want to make public at this time, for instance, something like that.
What about pictures of the Obama children or things like that?
Okay, so that's a good question. I mean, for the most part, I mean, the pictures that we release of the girls are very, they're very few, I mean, and that's done purposely. We want to show him as a dad. We want to show them as parents. But at the same time, we want the kids to be able to enjoy their privacy and grow up without having their private pictures, you know, being given public consumption. Occasionally, well, one rule that we have, and we ask the press corps to uphold this rule too, is that we won't release any photographs of the girls by themselves. That has to be a parent in the photograph. And we ask, you know, it's sort of an unwritten rule, we ask the press photographers if they will do the same. We can't, obviously, we couldn't force them to do that, but we ask a courtesy, we ask them to do that, and for the most part, they've done that.
When these pictures are released, are they then available for public publication in all forms? What are the restrictions on the Flickr release?
One of the things that we do, first with pictures of the girls, if we do release pictures of the girls, or if there's pictures in the Situation Room where there's too much paperwork showing, we upload those only as low-res files. That people would be able to see them on their computer, but if somebody wanted to publish it, you know, as a full page or a 2-page, they would have to call us, and then we can distribute those pictures on an individual basis. They can't be used for promotional purposes where, you know, you're showing a picture of the president and it's endorsing some issue or some product. So they're not to be used for commercial purposes. Now, I realize that editorial publications make money, but they're also providing, you know, a public service to, you know, to the readers and viewers.
Once these pictures are in the archive, will you retain the copyright, or will the copyright be in public domain?
My understanding, it's not my understanding, I mean, I've actually read the Presidential Records Act, And at 5 years after they leave office, the photographs are available for public consumption, but there's classification. So the Obamas can, as President Bush can, as every other president, can deem private photos private. So, pictures of the girls, they can say, we would like these to remain private, really for however long they want. And the pictures from the Situation Room, if there's documents showing, sort of the same thing. If there's classified material, those can remain, I don't know if the word's private or not, but now I say all that, and if you've paid attention recently, Caroline Kennedy has made public for the first time lots of material from the Kennedy Library. So, in 50 years, 60 years, Malia Obama may do the same thing. Right. She may say, okay, now I don't mind pictures of me during my teen years at the White House. I would like to now make these public.
I'm personally amazed with all the serious meetings you cover, with all of the difficulties of the day. When I look at the coverage on Flickr, the images that are released, I keep finding these wonderful, candid, seemingly spontaneous moments. How do you think of your day as balancing out between the officialdom and the candid work that you do? And I guess the pictures I'm thinking about are snowball fights and pictures with Bo the dog. Just a remarkable kind of daily activity behind the scenes that I'm very fascinated by.
Well, I mean, that's sort of like my job, right? I mean, that's why I took this job, was to be in a position to capture those candid moments. Trust me, I spend a lot of time hanging around. Like, my job is actually very much a grind, in that there's a lot of routineness in some of the things that I cover. And my job is to hopefully add a little bit of artistic or photographic flair to documenting this presidency, and that just means being there. And and being there is at times very tedious. But you talked about that picture of Sasha. I sit outside the Oval Office if there's nothing going on. I don't go down to my office, because you just never know, if something's going to happen. And that was, that particular image, if you show it, was Sasha came, walked right by me, said, "Hi, Pete," and then started walking to the Oval Office, and I knew she was up to something. And he was in the office, the door was open, he was talking to Katie Johnson, his secretary, and Sasha, crawls into the Oval Office, hides behind the sofa. I gingerly walk behind Sasha, snap a few photos. It was really funny. I should show the sequence someday, because Katie Johnson, the secretary, leaves the desk and is kind of like startled to see Sasha there. She didn't hear Sasha calling in, but she didn't say anything. The president's always, he's used to my presence and the snap of the camera, so he didn't know anything was going on. And then Sasha gets to the end of the sofa. She jumps up to try to scare her dad, and he just kind of looks up, totally unruffled. And I remember I said something to him later. I said, "I'm surprised that, Sasha didn't scare you. And he goes, she's 8 years old. How could she scare me?
Well, Pete, I want to thank you for letting us steal time out of your day and your evening. I really appreciate the candidness that you brought to the evening. Many of the people that are watching this will be librarians and archivists. Are there anything that you would like to tell them about your job that we haven't covered?
You know, one of the things that that I had the good fortune to participate in was this documentary that National Geographic did on the president's photographer. And actually, the thing that I benefited the most from participating in that was that John Bredar, who is the executive producer, gave me a copy of an audio-visual show that Yoshi Okamoto did on his LBJ photographs. You know, I never met Okamoto. He is long gone, but his work lives on. But I had never heard him speak, or and basically to see this audio slideshow, basically is what it was really fascinating to me. And the thing that like completely blew me away was that I always I'd always said to people that, you know, my goal was to produce photographs that people 50 years from now would be able to appreciate. And Okamoto in this slideshow said basically the same thing, but he said 500 years from now. And that just like completely blew me away on what I'm doing. You know, in that we're producing an archive that, you know, if the good earth is still here in 500 years, that people will be able to look back at these pictures. I mean, can you imagine if we had this same kind of an archive for George Washington or Abraham Lincoln, and that wasn't 500 years ago, that was only, you know, a couple hundred years ago.
Right.
So that little factoid of what Okamoto said completely made me feel that what I was doing was really important. And I'll probably never forget that, especially when I heard it for the first time.
Well, I think what you're doing is very important, and I'm proud to call you a friend and a colleague, and I really am excited about the daily work that you do. I've got to warn you that we do miss you here. You know, the VisCom is a great place to work, and it's wonderful to have you connected with us, but we do miss you on a daily basis. And we look forward to that time when you do return 5 or 6 years from now, or whenever it is.
Well, trust me, there isn't a day that goes by that, you know, especially when we've had, you know, an 18-hour day in New York, that I wonder about, boy, it'd be kind of nice to be at OU right now.
Well, I appreciate hearing that. I do have a question, though. I guess it's a little off of photography, but now that the White House is making its own beer, is it good beer?
I've tasted the beer, and it's pretty darn good.
Okay, well, I'll take that as a recommendation. Again, Pete Souza, thank you very much for this time this evening. Really appreciate it. You're stealing it away from the work that you do, and my best to you. Keep making good pictures. Good night.
Good night. Thanks so much, Terry.